For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for instant analysis of USC's 8th and final LA-based Holiday Bowl practice. Now, it's a rainy day in Los Angeles, so the Trojans actually moved to Cromwell Field, but they practice in full pads today. A little cramped, though, on that field. But, Dan, what were your overall takeaways from what we could see at practice?
Yeah, they look pretty upbeat. I mean, some of it is you're moving around and jumping around and trying to keep warm. I mean, this has been a year of unbelievably good weather. I mean, there's just almost not been a single practice all year. So that kind of made up for it. It got better as the day went on, but conditions were ugly. I mean, the wind and the chill and the cold and all that, and maybe getting you ready for the last time or the last two times we've been to San Diego, it hasn't been lovely. They say it may get better by the end of the week. Better tomorrow, when they practice in San Diego, but this was kind of nasty, and that's probably not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure if any Iowa people are watching this doesn't count as nasty, but it's for us Californians, it is.
Well, I'm an Iowa person though, and I booked and I guess they sold all their tickets, and they're at the Manchester in a Grand Hyatt, and it's sold out and all that. I'd probably be a little unhappy at this California weather
true,
though. I would,
true.
There's no snow on the ground, although you'll be able to see it up in the the mountains
True.
and that. But this would not please me if I were from Iowa getting in today.
True, not typical California weather. But the notable thing about practice today was when we first saw the players come out, Drew Richmond, the redshirt senior tackle, was not dressed out. Clay Helton said after practice that he sprained his foot during one of the previous practices. USC did have two closed practices on Thursday and Friday, so we weren't able to see what happened there. But he said that Richmond's foot got caught in the turf. Not ready to go yet. Clay Helton wasn't going to say the prognosis for Friday, but he said if Richmond is not ready to go, then Jalen McKenzie will move out to that tackle spot. And then it's actually a good thing that Liam Jimmons is back healthy from that elbow dislocation, so he will move to that guard spot if that were to happen. But that was the notable news of today.
Yeah, I mean, when we looked at Drew coming out, you would not have guessed he'd been in a boot the last 3 days, because he certainly wasn't limping or favoring one or the other. So I'm guessing he's got a shot. Still keep noticing Marquis Step just still hasn't got that flexibility in that ankle. He's foot. It's hard to describe it. Sort of a combination injury, but in surgery. But it may be just the fact that when we see him, he hasn't loosened it up yet, and because of the the metal that's in there and the way they do that surgery now. But Clay said he called him day to day, but the more Clay talked about him, and he is medically cleared, the thought was, Clay said he's not confident on it, he's not going.
Yeah.
It didn't sound, if you had to bet right now, you'd say probably not. He's just the way Clay's describing it. But, maybe they'll surprise everybody. It's, still 3 days, 3 full days, it'd be the fourth day. But I wouldn't probably be counting on Marquis, and if he's there, it's a bonus.
Yeah, Clay Helton did not sound confident in that front, but he was actually asked what's the cost-benefit analysis, if you will, of playing Step. Would you risk it and force him to kind of go on that ankle since it is the last game of the season?
No, I don't think so. No, I know Marquis is already talking about getting ready for Alabama next year, and he's thinking about Alabama next year. I don't think I would, but maybe this is the day that Keenan Kristen goes home to San Diego and gets a chance to show the home folks what he can do.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes up to this matchup of USC's offense versus Iowa's defense, you actually got to specifically ask Clay Helton about that, and you asked, has Iowa faced a team that's similar to USC in that regard, and what do you have to say?
I think that Clay's not just going to flat out say, nobody, but they really haven't played anybody. And that happens when you come out of the Big Ten, depending on your schedule, that, maybe Minnesota's got some really good wide receivers, probably doesn't have a quarterback that's, completing 71.8% of his passes. I mean, I think the thing that makes USC different is the number of receivers, how big they are, and the fact that Keaton, is so accurate. I think that probably, and I think Clay kind of admitted that that's probably, USC is going to be different from anybody they play. Yeah. And then the key there is, we also talked about, is this is I guess Iowa averages 64 plays a game, and they try to slow the game down. They run the clock down, the play clock. They try to get a little, little lead, get up 10-3 or whatever, and just milk the clock. That's why they average giving up just 13 plus points a game, and 24 is the highest they've given up all year. So you got to take your shots against them. But the good news there is if you get up a score or two, especially if you get up that second score, that's a difficult thing for Iowa to make up. Now they've got a 6'4", 243-pound quarterback that you better gang tackle, and they're just going to pound it and try to, their offense, as Clay said, their offense is set up to complement their defense because they're just going to, and he said you got to be efficient. You got to be efficient on defense, and you do not want to give them 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. Yeah. You want to give them 3rd and 7 or whatever, make them scramble and try to make plays that they don't want to make. So I think if you were both teams, you could say this is a good matchup for us. Now, who wins that matchup? Does USC, get to kind of start where it makes Iowa do things they don't want to do, make throws that they don't want to make? I think that's and I don't think that because Iowa really hasn't played somebody like USC. And USC, I think it was interesting. Clay said next year we're going to play 6 games like this, teams like this, top 25, and obviously starting with Alabama. Yeah. But he said, so this is kind of a good tip-off, for next year and how we're going to play it. And he thinks the kids are rising to the challenge and that they will be ready to be physical with them, but they got to do a lot of things right in terms of gang tackling and getting the run fits right and communicating right and doing all the things that they've got to do. And it's going to be an interesting challenge. I like this game. I mean, and Clay, said, well, there aren't that many where there are real, top 25 matchups in the bowl season this year. And so this is, I think it's a good game. I like the game for USC's purposes and for USC's players. I think it's a good game.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before, this matchup is kind of the difference between finesse and physicality. Physicality obviously being Iowa, and you got to ask Clay Helton, how do you match that physicality when it comes to these bowl practices and how they've been practicing and whatnot?
Yeah, and to some extent, I'm thinking blocking the run, for example. But Clay is thinking about how they match it with their defense against Iowa's run game. And with gang tackling, being very clear on your assignments, not, getting out of your, where you're supposed to be on the run fits and all that, and communicating, what you're trying to do. So I think Clay was more looking at it from the standpoint of USC's defense matching that physicality. I don't know how we're. I think that they're blocking the run well. They're blocking the pass well, USC. I think the key for USC always has been and always will be if they block the run well and if they run the ball well, especially against Iowa, they'll be in good shape because they can throw it. Yeah. And if Iowa knows they can run it, that makes life really difficult. Now, is USC physical enough to do that? Occasionally we've seen that, but it hasn't been the kind of thing where we've seen it, consistently, where they really believe that they can run the ball. If they can do that, USC'd be in good shape.
Mm-hmm. Now, and the interesting thing in regards to these practices, Clay Helton actually said that they've been going more good versus good in practice, ones versus ones, twos versus twos. So more like fall camp rather than what they've normally been doing with scout teams. So in that sense, you kind of get that physicality with getting more of your younger guys ready. He said that he's seen new things from Gino Quinones, Kyle Ford, Brew McCoy. Those practices have helped those type of guys. But do you think that that strategy will pay off in the sense of switching their model of practicing?
Absolutely. And he said the kids love it. Well, yeah, I think they do. And we think we do. That's what we liked. That's why we liked spring ball. That's why we liked fall camp. Mm-hmm. Probably didn't like, a lot of what we saw in between where they were, kind of trying to, conserve personnel and be safe. And so if they go back to, that kind of physicality where you just, you approximate game conditions and you go, ones against ones and things like that we haven't really seen. I guess they were doing it in drills as well as it, in 11 on 11. We'd like to see that a lot. And they certainly look healthy. I mean, basically, they're almost about as healthy as they've been all year. So it hasn't, taken that much out of them. So I think the kids know this is kind of a good game. This is a nice challenge, a different kind of a team that has got, guys that are going to be NFL first-round draft picks. It's a team ranked higher than they are, a team that these guys haven't played that much. And I think the players look like they're pretty involved in getting ready for this game, that they kind of like. I mean, I said, that I like the game. I think the players like the game too.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of the guys before we even started filming that looked like he was game ready was Austin Jackson, and he'll be going against another potential first-round draft pick against the game. What do you see in that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really means a lot for both of them. I think if I'm an NFL scout, and that's one of the neat things too, is you really do see there aren't a lot of bowl games that day. And you see a lot of NFL scouts in the press box, and they're in the back row usually, which is probably where most of us would like to be if it's as cold as it's a wide open press box. But they'll love the fact that they'll get to see two guys that are being kind of penciled into the middle of the first round, AJ Epinesa and Austin Jackson, go against one another. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that for if you're an NFL scout and you're trying to make a decision on guys that, sometimes they're enough better than the people they're playing against that you don't know how good will they be against people that are just as good as they are when they get to the NFL. This gives them a chance to see that. So, yeah, I think this is really a big deal for both of those guys.
Yep. Like I mentioned at the top of the video, this is USC's last practice at USC. They'll be in San Diego for the rest of the week. They actually head down to San Diego this afternoon. They'll have some practices at a community college in San Diego and do some of the bowl game festivities, like going to the zoo and going to
they're going to SeaWorld.
SeaWorld, yeah.
And they're going to the aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt, an active duty carrier. So that's kind of a neat thing. That's 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So that's always kind of a cool deal. And I think they realized they were going to practice at 2 tomorrow afternoon. Now they're going to practice at 3:30 because I think the back and forth from the 10 o'clock. And if you really, they let you stay the last couple of times. They just let you stay and tour as much as you want. And I think the kids were really fascinated by a real live working aircraft carrier is kind of a neat deal. Yeah. So they're not going to practice till 3:30, and tomorrow all the players and the coaches are going to be available. So today only Clay was available because they're getting on the buses and heading to San Diego. But I think Iowa's been there since yesterday. They flew in yesterday, and then USC arrives today.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, since this is our last practice incidentals of the season, I'll be off tomorrow, but you're going tomorrow. What are you expecting for the rest of the week as far as practices go? Can you really focus and get practice done when you're kind of in a new territory, new location?
I like the place. They've practiced. This would be the third time at this Southwest Junior College. I think it's just Southwestern College, but really nice facilities, kind of, by themselves, and so you're not getting a lot of distractions or whatever. It's a really good place to practice and a good, kind of secure location and all that. But I think in years past, they've gotten a decent amount of work once they've gotten there. I think some of the problem has been the work before they got to San Diego. But I think they're going to have enough time. I think USC actually practices one day that Iowa doesn't. So they're catching up on Christmas. USC's practicing. I think Iowa's taking the day off. So that gives them a little catch-up ability in terms of practice.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, any final thoughts, Dan, before we wrap it up here at USC?
I just like the game. I think this was a good game for USC. I just think this is working out well. I think for the matchup in styles, the matchup in conferences, all of that kind of thing. So I know people are, not happy about some of the things that ended the season and some of the decisions and bringing Clay and his staff back. But I like the game a lot, and I think for the players, what you want is, I think a lot of what you want for bowl games is make it for the players to have a good time to finish the season, but give them something to really focus at and a goal to end up strong. And if you're young each team like USC is to build for next year. So all of that is in this game. And again, it's convenient as heck. I mean, to go to San Diego. So I think this is a good game, and I'm looking forward to it.
In that sense, how do you think this one's going to go? What's your prediction?
I stay with my scores have always been like 31-28.
Yep.
I'm not sure that Iowa can score that many points. So, if USC doesn't give them scores, I think, I wouldn't be surprised if, like 28-14 or something like that. I think USC can score. I think they've got a shot at scoring more than the 24 points, which is the most Iowa's given up all year. So, 24-14, something like that, 28-14 would be my best shot.
Nice. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's 8th Holiday Bowl practice. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.